You've really already learned some ways where you can beat the odds, but let's look at all of the top 10 tasks a job seeker needs to do to move to the front of the pack. I love what Louis Gizzard said when he said, life is like a dog sled. If you ain't the lead dog, the scenery never changes. So here's the first task. Number 1, move on with proper parting. Job seekers succeed when they properly part from their old companies. We've already talked a little about this. Stuff happens. Stuff happens to each of us. Move on by seeking a better tomorrow. Bad things do happen to good people all the time. But ask yourself, was it such a bad thing? What we know is that your outlook shapes your outcome, either positively or negatively. The great American psychologist William James said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings, by changing their inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their lives." Reminds me of the story of the pessimistic boy and the optimistic boy, and psychologists wanted to know, well, how would they respond in different situations? So they set up an experiment, and they put the little pessimistic boy in a room full of presents, and they took the little optimistic boy and they put him in a room full of manure. And they studied them and watched them for a while, and after a while the clinicians walked in to see the pessimistic boy, and he was just kind of cowered in a corner and looking at all the presents. Not one had been touched, and when they asked him what he was doing, he said, I wasn't sure they were mine. I didn't want to break anything. I just was afraid of it. I just didn't want to touch anything. And they went to the next room where the optimistic boy was, and there he was, and he was just flinging manure from one side of the room to the other, just digging as fast as he could, and he was so excited and so happy, and they said, "What on earth are you doing?" And he said, "With all this manure here, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere." Outlook shapes outcome. It's time for you to put your behind in the past, because guess what? Your past is behind you. And put your head into the future, because guess what? Your future is ahead of you. You are angry at what happened. You hate what happened. You're bitter about what happened. But what happened is in the past. And that's where your feelings need to be. Now you need to take hold of today. Focus all your thoughts, all your feelings, all your spirit on what you have and what is happening today. Today, you have a blank tablet on which you can write your passion or your pain. Each day, write what you want. Then day by day, see how what can be will replace what has been. Remember, the hands of the clock move forward, not back. Number 2, gain a proper perspective. Job seekers succeed when they gain a proper perspective about their search for work. How many of you say hunting for a job is the hardest job you ever did? Well, if you're nodding, going yes, well, you're wrong about that. I guess you should have used a lifeline or something, because it's not a job. Why is a job search not a job? Because you don't get paid. No one owes you a job. No one is going to give you a job. You alone must accept full responsibility for the results. Nothing is going to happen unless you take ownership of your own ship. Hunting for a job is really far more entrepreneurial than a job. It is more the business of finding a business to hire you. It is much more like being an entrepreneur, being self-unemployed, and just starting out. Imagine this. You are now CEO and president of IWantToWork.com. Here are some questions about your new enterprise. What line of business are you in? What are you selling? How does it compare to the competition? What is your target market? What are your market channels? How do you plan to price your stuff? How do you plan to promote it? Who wants to buy it? How do you get access to the buyer? What do buyers value? How do you differentiate your business from others? How long will it take for you to break even, make a profit, get your first sale? Where should you be spending your resources? What kind of working capital is needed? You know, it takes work and hard work to get a new venture off the ground, especially one where you have little experience. Finding new work is not a job. It is far more entrepreneurial, which means you are in the manure until you pull yourself out of it. I love Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, where he writes, "We also gave you the rule that if you don't work, you don't eat." That's the mantra of the entrepreneur. Task number 3, set a proper pace. Job seekers succeed when they set a proper pace for the race to resume their work. In some cases, the pace is too fast. You know, there are no starting blocks at the beginning of a marathon. It is not how fast you start, but really how strong you finish. And in other cases, the pace is too slow. Now is not the time to catch up on your honey-do list. Anyone who says, well, since you don't have a lot going on right now, is wrong. You do have something to do. Here is the killer. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 65% of all job seekers spend less than X hours per week looking for work. So how many hours is X? The answer is 5 hours per week. To move from 5 hours per week to, say, 45 hours per week, a 9-fold increase, a job seeker must run the race to win the work. Paul writes to the Corinthians, "Do you not know that those who run the race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win." The 4th task is to be properly pointed, and properly pointed at the right target. Job seekers succeed when they are properly pointed. Otherwise, they are just like a loose cannon firing at anything that moves. Instead, be like that smart bomb that locks and loads right onto the target, has a singular focus. Experience shows that it is easy to shoot yourself in the foot when you fail to pick a better target. You're going to learn more about properly pointing to the right target in Session 2, Career Choices and Consequences. Task 5 is to prepare a proper package. Job seekers succeed when they prepare a proper package, when they advertise themselves well. We recommend creating, listen carefully, one and only one resume. Why? Because the easiest sell to make is to sell you. The truth about you, just the way you are. Not a facet of you, not you bending or twisting to fit some opening, just you. If they don't want you, let's find someone who do. You know, you'll learn more about how to be properly packaged in Session 3 when we talk about 2-minute and 2-page resume. Task 6, learn to properly promote. Job seekers succeed when they learn to properly promote themselves, when they market themselves well. You can network from your network, but All too often, job seekers network for results rather than to build relationships. More about this in session 7 when we talk about networking strategies. How about task 7? That is learning to deliver a proper pitch. Job seekers succeed when they deliver a proper pitch in an interview, when they sell themselves well. Most of you are not in sales, but you are now. You are selling who you are and what you've done when you are interviewing. So we'll learn more about how to deliver the proper pitch when we get to session 8 on interviewing tactics. How about task number 8? Well, that's when you negotiate the proper price. Job seekers succeed when they negotiate the proper price where both parties win. Some job seekers price themselves too low. They begin to discount their value, lower their asking price just to get a job. Remember, you are a creation, not a commodity. You have an intrinsic worth. And likewise, some job seekers get greedy more than needy, driven by their love of money. You know, the wisest man in the world, Solomon, writes in Proverbs, "There are 2 things, Lord, I want you to do for me before I die. Make me absolutely honest, and don't let me be too poor or too rich. Give me just what I need. If I'm too much to eat, I might forget about you. And if I don't have enough, I might steal and disgrace your name." More about winning negotiations in session 11 when we talk about win-win negotiations. The 9th task is sustain the proper perseverance. Job seekers succeed when they sustain their proper perseverance, when they stay the course, overcoming resistance with persistence. Christ himself, as recorded in the Gospel of Luke, tells about the parable of the persistent friend. Here's the story. "And he said to them, Suppose one of you shall have a friend, and shall go to him at midnight, and say to him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine has come to me from a journey, and I have nothing to set before him. And from inside he shall answer and say, Do not bother me. The door has already been shut, and my children and I are in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give him anything, because he is his friend, yet because of his persistence, he will get up and give him as much as he needs. And I say to you, ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened." Keep on keeping on until you reach your end. Never, ever give up on yourself, on life, on God. Task 10. Finally, remain with a proper prayer. Job seekers succeed when they remain in proper prayer every day in many ways. You will notice that at the Career Transition Workshop, we will open and close each session in prayer. We want to surround you by prayer. Sometimes the best way to get back on your feet is to get down on your knees. God answers prayers in ways that glorify his kingdom and help you the best. You know, there was a good book by Harold Kirscher, Rabbi Harold Kirscher, called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Here's what we would say about when bad things happen to good people. First, life challenges create life choices. It presents a chance for change. Each of us has a choice on how we choose to live our lives, how we will respond to trials. It is much less what is happening to us and much more what is happening in us. R.L. Sharp writes the poem Stumbling Block or Stepping Stone. It goes like this. Each of us is given a bag of tools, a shapeless mass, a book of rules, and each must make, ere life is flown, a stumbling block or a stepping stone. Our response to trials proves two things. It proves our true character, and it proves our true faith. Proof of character means your belief in who you are and belief in what you can do. Paul writes to the Romans this passage. And not only this, but we also exult in our tribulations, knowing that tribulations brings about perseverance, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope, and hope that does not disappoint, because the love of God has been poured out within our hearts through the Holy Spirit who is given to us. Proven character. Proven character, your belief in who you are and what you can do. But our response to trials also proves out our proof of faith, and that is your belief in who God is and what He can do. James, the half-brother of Jesus, writes in his book, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." You see, these trials that we face prove out our character, prove out our faith. One example in the Bible of someone having their faith proven, their character proven, is the story of Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. If you study the life of Joseph, found in the final chapters of the book of Genesis, the book of beginnings, you could divide it into a 5-act play. Act 1 is about prophecy to the pits. As the curtain rises, we see Joseph, a teenager, his father's favorite son. He is telling his brothers who have grown to despise him about his amazing dreams. He tells them that someday they will all bow down to him. Later, the brothers plot to kill him, but one of the brothers pleads for his life. So instead, they grab Joseph and toss him into the pits. So what have we learned about Joseph so far? Well, first, he's come from a highly dysfunctional family and has gotten himself into trouble. Youthful inexperience is part of his name, and he is a dreamer and a visionary. But although he follows instructions well and has kind of a sense of perseverance, he really lacks any sensitivity to the feelings of others and how he is perceived by others. He lacks tact. In short, like a lot of other teenagers, he ends up in the pits. Well, Act 2 is the pits to Potiphar. As the second act begins, his brothers dump him in the pit, ultimately sell him to a band of Bedouins moving to Egypt. He ends up as a servant in Potiphar's house. His brothers cover their crime by showing his coat to their father, which is stained with animal blood, and he assumes Joseph is dead. But in spite of his circumstances, we see that the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. He did his best. He earned increasing promotions and responsibilities until he became second in command of the household. Hey, that's the good news. Act 3 is Potiphar to the prison. That's the bad news. So things turn for the worse when Potiphar's desperate housewife tries to seduce him. When he flees her advances, she tells her husband that Joseph tried to seduce her. In anger, he throws him into jail. Joseph had a sense of absolute moral standards, of high integrity, of character. He passed the what feels good, just do it test. But he ends up wrongfully discharged and without a severance package. But in spite of his circumstances, we see that the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness and gave him favor in sight of the chief jailer. So once again, he did his best and earned increasing promotions and responsibilities until he became second in command of the jail. In jail, Joseph meets the Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker. But the chief candlestick maker had apparently been released. Each of them had a dream which Joseph interprets, which come true. When the cupbearer is being released and restored to his position, Joseph asks, "Hey, remember me." But for a while, the cupbearer forgets. Joseph gave his God-given giftedness, revealed the meaning of dreams, used the opportunity to network with well-placed people, but sometimes helping others appears to do little good, but he is willing to wait on the Lord's timing. Act 4, from the prison to the palace. As the fourth act begins, we discover that networking does pay off. The cupbearer does remember Joseph. And when he hears that the Pharaoh has had a dream which no one can interpret, he suggests that Joseph be called. So Joseph responds then to this unadvertised position. Before he arrives, we see that Joseph gets suited for success, dressed to impress. And then as he enters the interview, he listens before speaking. He seeks to understand, to be understood. He has a pre-planned minimum objective, which is always good in interviews. His was to glorify God. He nails the interview by interpreting the dreams and predicting times of feasting and times of famine. While the Pharaoh is so blown away with Joseph that he creates a job for him, one of those hidden jobs. Joseph humbly deflects the praise and gives it to God, but ultimately accepts the job. Now to Act 5, Palace to Prominence. In our final act, once again, we see how Joseph did his best given the circumstances, earned increasing promotions and responsibilities until he became second in command of all Egypt. From the pits to the palace was 13 years. For the next 14 years, he handled Egypt's feast and famine and ruled over Egypt. After the death of his father Jacob, his brothers come to him and bow before him just as he had dreamed. They are afraid of what might happen to them without their father's protection. And here's what he tells them. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Do you want to move from the pits to prominence? Realize that God may have put this deflection in your direction for your protection or correction or perfection. He has rescued you from the rut. Seeking you shall find, instead of asking, why me? Why not ask, what now, Lord? Let's wrap up. Here are some things that you can do. Turn to your action checklist found in your Seeker's Notebook. You'll find it on page 9 of section 1. We've been telling you things to know. Success comes when you put into practice what we've been preaching. For in the Gospel of John, it says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So here are some items out of the action checklist that I think you should do before the next session. Take what you've learned about the 6 stumbling blocks and the 10 top tasks and realistically estimate your length of search. LOS, length of search. How long will it take you to find new work? Now you know the time factor. What about the money? Figure your family's finances to see if you can make it safely to the finish line. Don't hope, know. Figure your family finances to see if you can finish. Here's another one. Emotions run high during a job search. Take time to write the letters and notes of reconciliation we discussed. Each day, at the end of the day, journal your thoughts and feelings about what's going on in your life. Write down what you've learned about you, what you've learned about life, and about God's provision in your life. Finally, to help you get ready for our next session together, ask yourself, what would give you job satisfaction? What do you do well? What type of work do you truly enjoy? Well, next time, we're going to complete this 2-part mini-series with a session entitled Career Choices and Consequences, How to Find Your Future Focus. Do you want to work for yourself or others? Do you want to continue your career track or jump to something new? Do you know what you want to do next? We're going to address each of those questions next time when we talk about career choices and consequences. Now let me remind you as I try to close each of these sessions that God has faith in you and what you can do with Him. Have faith in Him and what He has done, is doing, and will continue to do in your life. Let's go to Him in a final word of prayer. Lord, You are the one who is in control. Any control that we believe we have is an illusion. What was yesterday has passed. Tomorrow may never be. You hold our lives in the present, in this very moment of time. Give us the faith to believe when we doubt. Give us the courage to trust when things go badly. Give us the tenacity to press on for the prize You have prepared for us. Give us peace when we are scared, and lest we forget, thank You for all that You have already given, because You loved us. In the name of Your greatest gift, Jesus, we pray. Amen.